Hello, everyone. Nick Chavez here with Chavez and Valko, your key to immigration solutions. Here, as always, with my law partner, Martin Valko. Martin, how are you?
I am doing as good as I can under the circumstances. How about yourself, Nick?
Same. We're already in 2 weeks in this administration, and things have been chaotic to say the least. We'll go over some of these news and answer your questions along the way. If you have them, just go ahead and put them on the screen. But before we begin, just a reminder to please subscribe or follow or leave a comment below. That way you can stay on top of what's going on in the world of immigration. You all get important updates about immigration law or policies that could affect your case. We'll also do some posts about how to protect your rights. Very informative posts. So please don't forget to subscribe or follow. So Martin, let's begin with immigration enforcement. That's, as we've seen with these raids and arrests across the nation, Texas, Florida, Chicago, people and their communities are really concerned and fearful about what might happen to them or to their family members or friends in their communities. And most importantly, what should they do if they get picked up? And we know that ICE has been targeting certain immigrants in light of their resources. We knew that ahead. They were going to focus on individuals through this targeted enforcement, meaning they would only go after those with prior orders of deportation or those who have serious criminal records or have been recently arrested for an alleged offense. But it doesn't mean that they can go after, that they can't pick up someone else, right, with clean records. We've certainly seen or at least heard some reports and seen on social media, some people who have been arrested are individuals who have no criminal or deportation history. Some of them have legal status and some of them are U.S. citizens. So I certainly think that the administration, knowing that ICE has limited resources, they have to make up for that by doing this campaign of fear, announcing that ICE can go into churches, hospitals, and schools, posting their stats on how many deportations they made on a given day, things like that. They have certainly penetrated through and have made people fearful to go about their daily lives. People are afraid of walking outside and dropping their kids off at school, going to see a doctor if they're sick, or going to work. This campaign has been effective in that sense. So even if they say that ICE enforcement is being limited to certain groups, which might or might not be true if you're watching some of these videos in social media, it certainly doesn't provide any comfort to our clients who are eligible for immigration benefits or have an immigration case pending or have legal status, like people who have DACA, TPS. And that, of course, it's important why this is the reason why it's important that everyone should understand their rights. And these rights are not immigrant rights, everyone's rights. Americans, legal residents, non-immigrants, everyone living inside this great country is guaranteed the same basic fundamental rights in the law in our Constitution. Martin, let's talk about those rights. Which ones do you think are the most significant for?
Well, I mean, when we talk to our clients, and like you mentioned, we are seeing the fear being spread throughout the community. We're seeing it in our consultations, speaking with prospective clients, with current clients. People are getting picked up. Like you said, they're not the intended target, but they're getting picked up because they were there. And they speak to officers and inevitably, right, if something's happening, they'll pick them up and process them. So, three things really to remember is that anybody has the right to remain silent. If you're unsure what to say, or if you don't speak the language, or you just don't want to incriminate yourself, or just for whatever reasons, a lot of times, people would panic. And so just like anybody else, American citizens, you have the right to remain silent. And, officers, well, they they'll take the steps that they need to, but you are not required that you speak with them. The other thing is, you have a right not to open your doors. And so, when you see authority, when you see police, and with ICE officers, then you immediately, kind of freeze and think, you're obligated to open the doors. And again, unless there is a judicially executed warrant that you should ask to see, you have the right not to open the doors. When you are dealing with this situation and you are asked to, kind of almost coerce to sign some type of immigration related document that could put you on a bus or in a detention center, you don't have to sign any type of papers. I mean, immigrants have the same rights like us, right? To due process, to equal protections, to legal representation, right to crime victim protections. And so, people often think that if they are undocumented or if they don't have status, somehow they don't have those rights, but they do. And so they need to remember that, right? Often they are victims of crime and they think, well, because they don't have status, and they'll go to police, perhaps they'll get detained and arrested and perhaps removed. And that's they certainly have the right for being protected if they are crime victims. The let's spread the fear is they've hit it on the nail. It's doing its job, and but at the same time, when you look at their quotas, they wanted to hit, and they're apparently not hitting them, and so then they go after easy targets and people that are not the intended criminals with removal orders, right? I mean, certainly those are the priorities for deportation, for removal. But if they cannot get to them, and you may be at the wrong place at the wrong time, they get caught up in those sweeps, and then they boast. They boasted like they've got the most wanted man with, what was the reason? Overstayed visa. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, wow, so we're getting to that now.
It's interesting that some of those statistics that we're publishing, some of them were very comparative to what we had under Biden, and Biden had this priority enforcement policy in place where they would only focus on criminals and people who recently entered or who have prior deportation orders. But you're right, this is a campaign of fear, and it's designed, and we're seeing some collateral damage. Some people are being picked up, unfortunately, if they don't. Individuals who don't have a criminal history or nonviolent. But one of the things that I think at least it puts my clients at ease when I talk to them is that they should know, worst case scenario for most, not all, because some cases are different. If a person has lived here for a long period of time and they have family ties here in the United States, and you can say these individuals are hardworking, they contribute, they pay their taxes. The law does give them an opportunity to request relief here. They can apply for it's called cancellation of removal, and it does exactly what it says. It cancels removal and it grants the person legal permanent residence. And the judge is the only one that is authorized to do that. So you have to be in removal proceedings. Sometimes our clients say, well, that sounds great. How do I apply for that? But you have to be in removal proceedings. It is a difficult form of relief to get because the standard of hardship, but just the mention of that, and it's important that you do not sign any documents that would indicate that you're going to do away with that right. Sometimes you're offered voluntary departure, and if you sign that, you won't have that right to request relief. And in a lot of cases, you might be eligible to apply for a bond and be released while the removal proceedings. I want to talk a little bit about this app that we created for our clients. Is something we had developed, Martin, you and I, about 7-8 years ago during the first Trump administration, and the same fear arose. So we had very concerned clients. They were wondering, how can we get in contact with you if there's an encounter, if they're arrested. Certainly, they want to get in contact with their family and friends. And it's an app we created. It's called Law Pilot. Martin's holding it there. Tell us a little bit about that, Martin, while I drink a cup of water here.
Yeah, so Law Pilot was created under Trump 1.0, and that was exactly to address the fear of people who were afraid that they get picked up, and they wanted to let their loved ones and of course us, the attorneys, know that something happened. And so we came up with this idea. There were apps on the market, but really the difference between Law Pilot and the apps out there is that this connects the user with the providing attorney that provides this service, and it allows us to see where the person was when they enabled the emergency button. It tells us through GPS locator where on the maps where they were, and also the app records the audio and uploads it to the cloud for our review. So we have access to it, where the person was, who they were with, what was said. And this is just so important in just this, out of fundamental fairness, knowing what happened. What did law enforcement happen? Were they saying something that now they deny? And so it's loaded with features. We send out important immigration-related news to all the users through push notifications. It has these pre-recorded statements. So if you have the right to remain silent and you don't want to say anything, you can actually let the officer know. Right?
I am not resisting arrest. I am exercising my right to remain silent. I do not wish to say or sign anything without my lawyer.
Right, and so that is important.
To speak with my lawyer immediately.
Right, so the user would be letting them know that they don't wish to speak with them. They like to speak to an attorney, and that's it, right? And so, or there's you have no permission to enter my home, and I'd like to see a warrant. And then, of course, when you go to Know Your Rights section, you have all the Know Your Rights that attorneys that we talk in this program. It's all there, and you can listen to it, you can read it, and you can prepare yourself. And this has been a very effective way of dealing with these encounters, because people are empowered, they have the knowledge, they know what their rights are, and they want to go through the regular process. And so it's just a great way of letting your family, your loved ones know if something happens to you, but at the same time you're connected to us. So we provide this primarily to our clients, that we know their background, their immigration history about it. So when this alert goes out and our 24/7 response team is on it, we are able to immediately access the history, the notes, and know what is the next step for the person, as opposed to for somebody who just lets the loved ones know, and then the loved ones have to kind of scramble. They have to find somebody if they don't have an attorney. And so this, again, it's just so incredibly useful, and we have attorneys nationwide using it. And I mean, I have it. Even my kids have it, just in case something happens to them. They have an emergency. I mean, it's obviously for immigration-related emergencies, but it's fully loaded. We add different topics to it. People could, when they download it, and we have the link available, so they have to register with us and download it. They are able to kind of get educated on various things, if about the crime victims, U visas, VAWA, and other things, other reliefs, other classifications. So,
and like you said, we had that developed specifically for our clients, and we decided that we're going to expand some of the features of this for you guys, to the community, individuals who may not have lawyers, individuals who do have lawyers. So there are some free features. It's a free sign up. You can look up in the description. There's a free sign up there. You'll at least get what we've mentioned and Know Your Rights information, and you'll have the emergency button, and you'll get immigration news. So just go ahead and check that out, and it's in the description. I wanted to also discuss this update that we have, and it's this thing called expedited removal. It's what it is if an individual enters the United States without status, enters illegally in the United States, the law does give authority to immigration officials to quickly deport the person who crossed. And the policy under Biden, and it's a longstanding policy, individuals who've entered and are found within 100 miles and they've been here less than 14 days, they are subject to this expedited removal, this rapid deportation, where basically everything goes fast. They don't see a judge. They don't apply for relief except for asylum. Asylum is the only exception, but very much it's a quick process, and they have a deportation order in their record. So last week, the Trump administration, they changed all that, and they expanded the process, the expedited removal process, to anyone who's here in the United States. Doesn't matter if you're in El Paso or you're caught along 100 miles within the border. You can be in Kansas City, right? And if you've been here less than 2 years, that's the cutoff time. If you've been here in the United States less than 2 years, then they are saying that they're going to put you in this quick deportation process. And so, what are your thoughts on that, Martin? And what do you think we should do, or how the people should prepare? Because, somebody who's picked up, let's just say in Kansas City, right, they don't know if this person's been living here for less than 2 years. We certainly don't want individuals who have ties here and who've been living here for a long period of time to be swept in this process where they don't see a judge and they're quickly deported. What should they do?
Certainly they should, just like one of the requirements says that if you've been here living here, you don't have physical presence under 2 years, then they can go ahead and take you through the expedited removal process. And so obviously be able to demonstrate that, right? Carry the evidence that if anything happens, you're able to present it. But at the same time, still be able to speak to the officers and talk about your ties, talk about your family ties and physical presence, and still request to see an immigration judge. So you should never give that up, but be prepared for it. Right? So everybody has a different story, and people may have criminal records and other things, but you want to have that organized. You want to be able to show them that you have been here for that period, so you will not get swept up.
Yeah, that's good advice. The last update is the Lincoln Riley Act. Lincoln Riley is a person who was murdered, a victim of a crime. It was committed by an immigrant, and it was a very politicized bill, and that has been signed into law. And as I mentioned before, really, it does a lot more than it's intended. I think it gives state attorney generals incredible power over how to control immigration. Immigration law is a federal law, but this throws a wrench into that, and anything that immigration does, if the state attorney general disagrees with a decision or a policy, they can file a lawsuit, which makes it very difficult to navigate through this already difficult system of laws that we have, right? But what it does is individuals who have been convicted of certain crimes are may be subject to what's called mandatory detention. So if an individual who doesn't have legal status, or individual who might have legal status, like a legal permanent resident, if they are convicted of certain crimes, there are certain crimes under which the law says, you know what, we deem you a person who is a threat to society, and therefore we're not going to give you a bond. We're used to seeing in the criminal justice system individuals, asking for bonds, and immigration in the immigration world, we do have a bond process, but they're saying that if you are convicted of certain crimes, and we're talking about serious crimes, we're talking about aggravated felonies and whatnot, drug distribution offenses, those individuals are subject to mandatory detention if they are arrested and they're not eligible for a bond. And this puts them at a very severe disadvantage because it's very hard to represent somebody who's detained. Now, what they did is they expanded that list to theft offenses. Okay, and we're talking about nonviolent offenses, including shoplifting. This is the person who committed this crime was arrested for theft, and so they wanted to expand it to these theft crimes, including shoplifting. And you don't need a conviction. So if just the charge, just an allegation. So if you're still you're with this whole concept with you're innocent until proven guilty, that doesn't apply here. I mean, if you have been charged, and you could have been wrongfully charged. Somebody could have said, hey, I want this person, I don't like this person, I'm gonna call police and accuse this person of stealing something. If they don't have legal status, or if they're legal permanent residents, just the fact that they're being charged with it will place them in mandatory detention. So it's pretty harsh. Martin, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's just like you mentioned. Laken Riley was a nursing student that was violently killed by Jose Ibarra, a Venezuelan immigrant who was caught and released on some petty theft crimes and petty crimes, and that's basically what happened. You know how broad this act is. When typically we worry about the final conviction, the criminal disposition. And here, you get detained just from being arrested, not even charged, right? Arrested, charged, or convicted. But that's something that's just incredibly broad. And Adam, we haven't discussed it yet, but people, our followers and listeners have been told about the TPS, about temporary protected status, and that is meant for people, nationals of certain countries that are designated to be protected from certain natural or man-made disasters, and Venezuela was one of them. And we recently learned that although the Biden administration had extended TPS, redesignated the country for another 18 months, the current administration had rescinded it. And it was Venezuela. I checked others, and it was Venezuela, and Jose Ibarra was Venezuelan. And so, and they're talking about it. And when, at the signing of the bill, President Trump said that we are targeting violent criminals. And so, I think it had something to do with it. I don't know about
Sure.
you, but it just gives incredible power to ICE agents, to police officers, to state legislatures. So, yeah.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's and we understand. Look, we're not saying that criminals should remain in the United States. We believe in reasonable immigration laws, but with respect to immigration enforcement, don't we want to go after and focus all our resources on serious offenders as opposed to people who are caught shoplifting? What this does is it diverts all the resources, and just in creating more bed space for somebody, right? Instead of using those resources to really go after and investigate the serious offenses, where we now have to waste resources, local state resources, into housing pretty much everyone who's not even convicted. So yeah, it's sort of crazy, but we'll hope. The hope is that maybe this is a launch to something new. Maybe you're talking about more anti-immigration, but maybe the possibility of legislation for Dreamers. So we have to wait and see. We have a question here, and this is from Cesar on Facebook. He wants to know, he has a case with us, and he wants to know, okay, he has an I-130 petition pending, right? And he wants to know if he's, let's just stopped or whatever, or an ICE officer, talks to him, like what's the deal there with those who only have the I-130 petition pending?
Well, I mean, petition itself, and people ask that, once we start the consular process, so I presume that there's no other relief right now except going through the consular process, which requires the filing and approval of the petition, going to and file a waiver, which excuses somebody's unlawful presence. And then once the waiver gets approved, they continue on to the U.S. consulate or embassy in their home country. So it's a fairly long process, and the petition starts the process. Now, unfortunately, the petition itself does not protect that person. Now, it depends who they are speaking with, but they would or could tell the officer that they are in this process if it gets to that, and be able to, again, demonstrate the ties, demonstrate physical presence. It depends. I mean, would that be a police officer you're talking about, or ICE officer?
Let's just say that it's a police officer, right? Let's just say your basic stop, and each case is different. What I say here, it's very general, and I might say something different to somebody who has a completely different situation. But in general, if you don't have any documents, right? Some clients say, well, I'll have an expired driver's license. So, whatever is valid, and if it's yours, it shouldn't be anything fake. So don't present any fake documents or fake ID. That's going to get you in a worse situation. But in Texas here, right? I mean, you have to give your if they ask you for identification, you have to say, hey, this is my name, this is my date of birth. You could be cited for not giving that information. If the police officer says, and that's a big if, okay, they might just get a ticket, but if they ask you, you have the right to not answer that, okay? Now, if you don't answer that, it's up to the police officer. I mean, we can probably take a wild guess here that if, depends on the officer, but if that officer's having a bad day, they can call ICE and they could process you. At that point, you're in the system and they'll take your fingerprints. They're going to know you have this. So at that point, you're cooperating in the sense that you're giving them truthful information. You're not lying. They're going to place you in removal proceedings, but then so what? In this case, I think that if you are detained after you're processed, they should give you an interview for a bond. If you don't have any criminal record history, if you don't have any criminal convictions in the past, they could give you a bond here, and you do have a right to a bond if you lack a criminal record or you've never been deported in the past. So you could get out with a bond, usually $3,000 to $5,000, and then you're placed in removal proceedings. While you're out, you'll have your first removal hearing maybe in a year, maybe 2 years. They're backed up. And then you could, if you've been living here for a while, specifically for 10 years or longer, and if you have family ties here, it puts you in a position, ironically, to apply for relief in front of a judge. And in some cases, you could even apply for work authorization during this proceeding. I know you need to really put your head in the blender to understand all that, but you don't have to give them information about your rights, about your immigration status. You can stay mum. Now, if you're outside Home Depot and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, what's your name? Are you from around here? Where are you from?" My first reaction is move, walk away. Unless if they identify themselves as a ICE officer, you have the right to say, "I'm not going to talk to you. Am I being arrested?
Right.
Do you have a warrant for me? I'm not going to give you any of my ID. I don't know who you are." And you certainly can can and should do that, especially if they don't have a warrant or any basis other than the fact that you appear, you're brown skinned or whatever. So that's my general advice.
And that's why when you're walking around, when you're driving, you should have the app, you should have Law Pilot open. And so if it comes to it and you're in this situation where, you don't know who you're speaking with or what's going to happen to you, just let your family and attorney know that, you may be in some kind of danger or some kind of situation that could lead to arrest, right?
Right.
And
we have a question here from Rosalina. Thank you, Cesar. I hope I answered. If not, yeah, you can send us an email. I'll be happy to look at your situation more closely. Rosalina asks, as a child of an immigrant, if she joins the military here, the National Guard, because does that help their parent?
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is requesting a military parole in place, Rosalinda. So this is a great question, and we help our clients with this kind of a scenario. And so you are a U.S.-born citizen based on your service in armed forces, in ready reserves. And whenever you are talking to or speaking to a recruiter, you can ask them if you would be able to apply for parole in place. But basically, you are either in the active service or honorably discharged from your service, and based on that, you are able to apply for military parole in place. And that is what we call a virtual parole. So if it's granted, it serves as if your parent, in your case, would receive this virtual parole as if they entered or they were paroled, they have the legal entry. And based on that, as a U.S. citizen, at that point, you have to be 21. So sometimes you can enlist and be 18. So you could obtain the military parole in place, but you wouldn't be able to sponsor them until you're 21. So let's just say that you are 21 and you have served or are serving, then you're able to obtain the military parole that takes several months. And if granted, and most of them are granted unless there are some prior negative immigration history, perhaps some criminal convictions, then the parole should be granted. And it's just a really great way of not even having to leave, like DACA grantees have to apply for parole and physically leave and enter and be paroled. So yes, the short answer is yes, and it's a great way of doing it. We have plenty of clients that have done that.
Yeah, and also there's a related program. You mentioned parole in place, and there's a related program called Military Deferred Action. So let's just, after reviewing your parents' information, it turns out that that they are not eligible for a green card, maybe because of their entry history or whatnot. There is something very similar to DACA, but this applies to parents or family members of those who have served or are serving in the U.S. military. And that includes individuals in the National Guard if they're in the Select Reserve. Coincidentally, Rosalinda, I was looking at that possibility for a client who just enrolled in the National Guard. And I had to, this is the individuals who can qualify in terms of the Army. You can't see that, but it does include National Guard, and that's a common question. If you are training, if you complete a training, it could do that. But I would recommend that you consult with a lawyer, and if you have paperwork, then show that just to confirm it, and that would be a good idea. Thank you for your question, Rosalina. We have a question or comment here from Tamara Brash. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. She asks, in Florida, schools are going in. ICE, they can enter the school and interrogate kids, and there's not a shared protocol. They want to, any updates about that, take them out of school. It's an interesting question. We're in Texas, and our school district has made it clear that they're not going to share any information with ICE officers because this is a place of learning, right? But even so, my little daughter asked me, what should I do? Or, what should my friends do? They don't have to say anything. They don't have to talk. If there's no judicial warrant, I would just, that's their first lesson in civics, right? And they're getting a crash course in constitutional law. You have the right to remain silent. Thank you, Tamara, for your question here. We have Stephen Strange. If someone was arrested, thank you for your question. If someone was arrested and found not guilty and then had the case expunged, how does that affect them if they are detained by ICE? If someone is arrested, not found guilty. Okay, so expungements. Expungements are, they are, if you've been convicted of a crime and it's been expunged, would that affect your could that count as against you? And in most cases, it does. Expungements does not erase the fact for immigration purposes. It does for state, but for immigration purposes, you'll note that the question is always, have you ever been convicted of a crime, including those that have been expunged? Okay, so if a case has been expunged, then it could certainly be something that an immigration officer looks at if they're evaluating your situation to see if you are deportable or not. They can look at things like that. What it does, an expungement does have its benefits, though. I mean, in some cases, immigration has the burden. They have the responsibility to charge you. So they need evidence, right? You would think that, somebody's saying that you're deportable, they need to produce evidence. It's called the burden of proof. And if your cases are expunged, it makes it difficult for them to get a copy, right? So in some cases, it's actually advisable that after a person has been through the process and a criminal proceeding, what have you, they can talk to a criminal lawyer to see if they qualify for expungement.
And it also would depend on, right, what is your status? I mean, if you're undocumented, and here he asked, if you're found not guilty, which is great, then you have it expunged, which it just disappears, even the arrest, everything disappears. You are still in custody of ICE, and they're just going to follow the procedure, right? So they're going to be looking to see, can we remove him under expedited order? Was he here for less than 2 years? Mm-hmm. And so at that point, you are basically trying to see if you have relief, like you mentioned earlier. Can you defend yourself? And you have relief in court. You have cancellation of removal. So that happens too, where everything was taking off, the arrest, you've got it expunged, but you are still in ICE custody.
But you were found, and I didn't get that detail, Stephen. If you were found not guilty, a lot of people do that where they were found not guilty, but they don't want the arrest record to be in their records. It looks bad when you're applying for a job. They just want that expunged. Hey, I was found not guilty. I want this thing completely out. Certainly, absolutely, you can and should do that. Yeah, and it would not affect your situation if you were found not guilty. You're just trying to get the whole thing. You're trying to rid the record of any indication that you were arrested because you were found not guilty. Okay, well, I think in closing, do you have anything to add, Martin?
No, just again, just like we did before, letting people know that we are here for them. The community is here for them. The community of immigration attorneys are here for them, and stay tuned. Keep listening and watching these types of shows, and educate yourself. Visit the links in our program so you can register for Law Pilot and download it, so you could be connected and be informed and be protected. And until next time, I wish everybody a great weekend.
And so, Sarah, I did get your question, and what we'll do is we'll send you an email. Thank you so much, everybody.